for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth, I am the light, illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to another video with me here today. And today I want to talk about the anchoring of different densities and realities within ourselves, because we all know that reality is layered, right? We've talked about this before. And so it's quite often that in this collective reality we will come across different representations of how we're supposed to be creating and how and what manifests in our reality. And oftentimes that sort of pulls us into the reality of that narrative. And we forget that we're each in a specific installment, let's call it like that, of anchoring of a particular consciousness that once it's being anchored in a specific way, it becomes a level of a specific density. So we've talked about different dimensional realities holding a space for densities within it. And there's different beings on this planet who, let's say, we come from different densities. And those different densities are also different narratives of life, which means, let's say a 12 density being would start downstepping their frequency until eventually they would become susceptible, for this incarnation into this reality. So they would have to downstep their frequency quite a lot. And in this process, right, of downstepping the frequency, they're already infusing the collective reality of what they're moving into. But once we become incarnate into this human body as light beings, as many different star beings, star seeds as well, we kind of need to be birthed through this template, right? And this template of the earth, when we originally began our incarnation, held a specific density, and we say, okay, this is the third dimension. So I want to say again, this book, Affinity by Aurea, has this beautiful reference of the chakric system, but also in the way that it relates to dimensional realities. So, for example, the third chakra, in relating to a third dimensional space, it is a root chakra that corresponds to the third dimensional, the realm of humans, animals, and plants. So it's kind of like our starting point. But today I was shown these triangles, right, points of triangulation, that each consciousness begins to create, So let's say here we have a reference about the first chakra corresponding to the first dimension, which is the mineral kingdom. There's different specifications in different narratives. So in one, first chakra would respond to the core of the planet. So here we have the mineral kingdom. So the second chakra here is corresponding to the second dimension, which is the realm of bacteria and of simple structured, purely instinctual life forms. So let's take these two, for example, right? So in their coming together, when life was first seeking out a way of becoming a manifestation of the consciousness, becoming a specific form, right? It needed to unify those two aspects. So each triangulation point, therefore, would be the two narratives coming together and creating what we call the third aspect, right? Each becoming its own narrative that is independent from the two, succinct narratives that went before it. So we would say the first and the second densities in their correlation would come in a result of birthing this third density, right? And it's sort of like the way life, right? We've talked about life coming into separation and holding the highest point of that duality within it. So that duality once can become unified polarity once these aspects are able to come together. And that's when through this triangulation narrative, we have a totally new principle. So in each of the consciousness interceptions like coming to this planet, right? Consciousness was able to interpenetrate that field of reality through the narrative, which was open, right, which was anchored. So let's say this occurs first on a person level, right, as there's always a pioneering energy involved. And then when a collective was able to hold that space, right, there was this held at the collective level. But then also we need to understand that there needs to be a correlation between what we call the planetary life force and our personal life force, or this collective that's being open now. And we now see this, right, where we are in resonance, where we are on a planetary basis. We see now this increase happening with the Schumann's resonance, which is like a response mechanism of the planet, like she's becoming more alive and speaking and communicating, and it's our conscious communication with her, because we're building now a new triangulation point. So let's say for a very long cycle this was being developed, and once this higher intelligence consciousness for what we call now the human life and the conscious human, the awake human, right, the human becoming self-aware, you know, that took time, right, in, let's say, that evolution and its evolutionary process. So now the next octave would be let's say the third density coming together with an opening of the fourth density, and together, right, when they would reach their maximum point of what we call the opposition, which is basically that strongest aspect of polarity before coming back into unified polarity, which is the union of both. So we have the third template and the fourth, resulting in the birthing of the fifth. And that's what we went even planetary through these stages, right? And the closer you are to that union, the faster this begins to unfold in terms of what becomes open and receptive for us through experiencing that as not just this consciousness, but body avatar of that receptive consciousness, being receptive to those narratives of life, let's say, that we before didn't have direct access to. We might have been, you know, if we did a lot of esoteric spiritual studies, we were aware of it and understanding the principles of life. But as a conscious human, this still wasn't like out there, you know, we didn't anchor it yet. So let's say now this third and the fourth component, which we talk about as the third and fourth density, and we've been talking about how that is happening on our planet, and we in relation to the collective consciousness, we required quite a lot of individuals who would be open to keeping that flow that's called the fourth. And the fourth is a lot about informational infusion. So now we have a lot of people coming into awakening and holding the space for more information to come through. Because when that information can unify with that third template, right, with the third density, it's informing it. It's already creating something new. And that's why we talk about now this 5D consciousness, you know, and when it's talked about and presented through a not fully layered perspective, you know, like reality is organic and it's truly a spiral, right? And we're morphing into, you know, through this infusion process, first becoming infused with it, but then we have to anchor it. Because without that anchoring, we're truly not holding space through our bodies for that type of functionality, right? It's not yet a functional reality. That's what we mean. So let's say you have a specific human being who has, you know, when we go through these stages of layering reality and anchoring these higher densities, we have a human that is, let's say, opening up to 4D, which means they're anchoring fourth density into their body. And that means needing to open up to a lot more flow of information and becoming open at all levels, right? Understanding that there's polarity. Because sort of like in the third density, there's a lot of what we call the form held together in a very structural way, but there's not enough movement that then begins the next evolutionary stage of life, which is, you know, now it's happening. And we still recognize that there's quite a lot of duality in a position, and yet at the same time there's also movement, there's also flow, because 4D, right, was already anchored at the collective level. But what's happening now that as a collective, we're also anchoring this 5D narrative, right? This fifth density at a collective, which, you know, the collective doesn't mean all people, every single one, every single human's now alive. But it means a critical mass, right? A critical degree of that which then interjects itself and it's in a way, through this beautiful relationship with the planetary life force, it reaches the template, right? But at the same level, we also hold individual aspects that go and extend much higher, broader than that. That's why we're always going to have beings who are pioneers that are already anchoring consciousness at the next level, or even that which surpasses the next. So that's why my work is called even, you know, Ascension Pioneers, because I myself have been a pioneer of anchoring these higher densities quite rapidly, right? But we've talked about how eventually this will interfere in a way with our physicality if that anchoring process is not approached through love. And that's why learning to hold the space for the physical body, for the human divine child, which is truly our creation, in the process, because we've talked about it, that if this is not done, we're going to hit a wall. And it will become more an ideology than a factual thing, a functional or operational reality. That's where we're going to hit roadblocks, and we're going to have challenges because it's not yet in flow. It's not like it interpenetrates all of the subtleties of what makes us human and all of the human bodies, not just what we appear, you know, it's in our appearance as gross matter. So here we have a description of the, let's say, fourth dimensional plane is the plane of feeling, thought forms, fairies, elementals, astral entities, and the feeling aspect of your dreams. So it's basically also flow. Your astral body is fourth and fifth dimensional, so you have lower and higher. So then we have the fifth principle, and the fifth dimension is the home of the cities of light, ascended masters, many archangels, and overlighting divas. It also holds the realm of the dark control lords, the satanic realms, and astral control groups. When you have dreams in which you give and receive healing, attend classes with other light beings, or travel through space, you're having fifth dimensional experiences. So that's why now, as you can see, because at the collective level, we're anchoring this 5D or fifth density. That's where now so much of this is coming up. We see this satanic oppressions being quite exposed. They're like right in front of our faces, and people are waking up to these things that were before maybe hidden. They didn't know about, you know, the controlling elites. And it's not about which human or which, you know, let's say famous person is a part of this or that. It's about us opening up to the fact of what's happening and seeing. Because once we anchor something, that's like right there, right? It's right in front of us because it's also within us. And that's what we can have our own personal experience with anything before something is truly anchored as our own template. That's why our template is like an ever-expanding thing. It's alive, right? It's pulsating with life. So as this collective anchoring is happening, you will now see a lot of people going through this stage. And we have a lot of teaching right now how to anchor and create from the heart, which we also many times relate with this unity or unification that we call the fifth density. A lot of what was talked about before for a specific time, right? And these times are now they're speeding up. There was, as you know, the specific teachings about how our thoughts create, and the moment you switch the thoughts, you know, you would switch your creations, and a lot of that had to deal with the fourth octave, as I call it. But remember, us as humans, we're constantly growing, we're organic, we're pulsating with life. So we don't just stop with one narrative. We're continuously experiencing how it is to be in the presence of all of this. So we have a direct source infusion and moving beyond all and through all of these layers. Because we're truly not these dimensional beings, or, you know, we exist in this density only. But something, as it's being anchored through us, that overwhelming sense, in a way, it becomes our overall experience for that time being, because it needs to be anchored. And let's say in a specific individual level, it might last for someone that amount of time or that many years, or for someone it's different, because also as beings we come from different levels of density. And if you're already from a density surpassing the level you're anchoring here, it's easier for you, right? Because you're just remembering, and as a human you're being receptive to that remembrance, and it's helping you to anchor it here. While some beings who are still learning it, who have never been in that space of density before, because they're part of this organic evolution, and they've been developing specifically with Earth and her cycles, so for them it's like it feels very new when they're opening up to that, even though at the higher level, right, we've talked about this principle, how it all coexists. But from a level of their perspective, because they're coming from this, right, from downside upwards, it might feel new, so for them it might last a longer. So those beings are coming as light beings and descending into this experience. They're also descending these densities. They're bringing them into conscious anchoring on the planet Earth. So many beings, and specifically beings like higher dimensional beings who came and are inhabiting these bodies at this time, and we're helping that these aspects of life, because basically that's what they are being anchored now as the earth is opening up, and her template is also pulsating and asking and inviting these higher possibilities of life. So because of that, I also want to mention that the fifth density, and when you come into union with that triangulation, right, the third, fourth creating the unity of the fifth, what happens is you're going to experience a tremendous unity of your masculine and feminine forces of life, or principles of life. And this is sort of like that first level of androgyny, and there's many, because each of these unity points, right, each of these triangles that kind of does like this, right, it's like a spiral, the spider climbing through its web of life. And it's like each time there's going to be a greater overlay of divine probability and possibility of what life can be, because we're basically not just creating a reality as a direct extension of who we are, but creating our own bodies, and that's what becomes susceptible to us at these higher levels. So recently I was talking again to my experience, right, I've shared with you, and how I had this healing session. So I was talking with this beautiful healer, and we've talked about this, right, this anchoring, and she was telling me her experience when she was first anchoring, like the fifth, and how difficult it was, and what was sort of her life and what it was reflecting at that time. And then she was telling me what you're anchoring now is even higher, so it's probably sixth and higher. So she said just tune into that, and I actually did tune into that, and it made sense because remember a while ago I shared with you how they were showing me now that the merging I'm doing now is with the dolphin essence, and that is that sixth density. Often we call the serious correlation, right? And so here I want to read you as what it is from that perspective, but I would really advise you to, grab a book yourself. So here we have this corresponding with the sixth dimension of geometry, right? We have the sacred geometric patterns of light that also make up our light body form. So everything in existence is held together by geometric patterns. Without six-dimensional correspondence, nothing could be held in form. Christ consciousness is the name given to the consciousness of the sixth dimension. That is why many people, you will see, they relate even the embodier of Christ consciousness, who we last remember as Jesus Christ, that he is of Sirius archetype, right, or principle. It's beyond that, because we all as beings, we have levels held at different densities. So let's say you as a light being, right, when you're descending, when you're stepping down the frequency on each of those aspects, you're creating like a mini me version of you, which would mean you're giving birth to a new aspect of yourself, but that it's like this light of divine oneness could reside in any of these aspects, right? You're building union to that. That's why we're creating union as light beings coming into physical matter. So the path is kind of like right as the opposite of the path of those who are growing upwards, right? Growing in that evolutionary sense. So it's interesting how evolution and then the descent of that, which is sort of evolving towards the light, and the light, growing deeper, moving into matter. So that's basically one. So the next triangle they actually presented is this, those of us who've already done the anchoring of the fifth. And for me, they told me that was a while ago, and I've just been holding the space and holding it for a lot of beings to come into that and step into that. And that's what we do. For a while, we hold the space and then we move on. And so they were showing me how with my recent experiences, right, that I've had to go and endure through my physical body, that sort of opened up a new gateway. Because, when we're lazy, nothing happens. We're just sitting in that bubble, and it feels like that's all there is, and we're safe there, and life is good. But basically, when it's time to move on, something in your life will be put there, like a point of inception for the experience to expand. And that in my life was, as you know, last year, when Spirit started preparing me for a new cycle. It was very difficult the way it began, and having to break through so many of these seeming oppositions. But basically there were these triggers that are now still helping me to anchor this higher awareness. Because for me, from this sixth and fifth aspect of the fifth becoming, coming into union with the sixth. But first, they both need to be anchored, because once you've done with the fifth, right, so you have 3 and 4th, the unity is fifth, and then each one becomes an independent, right, sovereign, new layering, right? So you have now the fifth, you're anchoring the sixth, and then together it's going to have to come into union. The union will be the seventh. I hope this makes sense, right? If you're new, that's what Spirit was showing me today. This triangulation, unity is happening. So they were showing me this about me, or where I am now, is this work, right, that I've shared with you, this training with the light body intelligence and learning about it, how it works, how it functions, how to sustain our bodies through this light body intelligence, but that this process requires so much patience. I had to endure so much patience for the physical body and the physical form that before in my journey, I never had to really deal with. Because for the first part of my life, when I look back, when I was anchoring the fourth, I was sharing a lot of information about this, right? Then the whole fifth was really coming back into this union. We've talked about this divine union and illumined union being achieved on that note, on that level. And now then I went even beyond it, and this is where I am now. So with this sixth, it's like understanding how this light body intelligence works. And usually a soul, we as a being or light being, would choose a particular issue or challenge specifically relating to what we call the genealogy of the body, or deontology. That's how I like to call it. And it's like experimenting within oneself. These are not like external experiments where another being, we've talked about that, right, when they're doing this on you. But unfortunately, in my case, this was so, because it led me with specific consequences in the body that now they're starting as set-off points for me to go deeper into what's next. And this is where it gets tricky, because each time when something is held at a specific level, but you can't break through, you can go deeper, it's almost like, we've talked about this before, like you hit a wall, you can't move forward, right? And this is where the spiral, or the womb principle of life, the womb of the mother, needs to be applied. So when I'm doing this healing, right, I'm doing it as a divine trinity process, because the first part is focused here in the brain, the second one in the heart, and the third one in the womb. And what I've noticed is there's still within ourselves, as we're going through the process that's new, because it hasn't been anchored before. And what they've shared with me, not just through me, it hasn't been anchored before, but in general, where the earth is now, this is new, but it's sort of like once the earth was self-decisive as a sovereign being, that all of these aspects will now be anchored. Beings came here rushing in, flooding in, and saying, okay, we're going to help with anchoring these templates of higher dimensional densities. So each time, right, a new aspect will be new. And this is usually what I want to talk about today specifically, is how to hold space at that level which is new. Because a lot of times what I'm noticing myself, what I'm going through now specifically, is I'm usually going to be right before a major breakthrough, or something will either distract me, or I myself will feel like I'm hitting a wall, or I'm going to be the one distracting myself, because it's almost like you're just before a major new breakthrough. But it's usually big, it's intense, it's a lot, even for the body to handle. So it's kind of like you yourself are still finding like points out, right, exit points. And it's interesting because it's almost like you're not like open to receive at that point. And this is where a lot of more love and compassion needs to be dedicated to physicality, to the human body. Because even just today, usually I'm having the spiral, right? Because healing is spiraling. It's not linear, it's not even cyclical, it's a spiral. So each time of the spiral, you're going to come back a whole circle, and yet you're a little higher, right, on the octave. But it feels like you've hit a point in which nothing makes sense anymore. And this is usually when I call it, I crash, right? I crash and burn. But this is usually before, right, a major breakthrough. So I'm noticing that, like, for me, it's weekly now, right? So I do my processes at the end of the week, which for me is Friday, is I'm going to have a mini breakdown, and it will usually be more body symptoms or something calling me out, and I'm going to feel like that, I'm just going to quit. It doesn't make sense, it's not working, because the mind is going to tell you that, because it's still quite there, it's still present with you. It's all aspects are present in the body all the time. we don't negate aspects, right? We're just like expanding all of these as we're expanding within these templates. So what happens is I'm going to see like this, almost like needing to just go in your cave, and it's just not working, and feeling like this sadness and almost like desperation, like, oh, it's not working, what I'm going to do. And usually I feel like these sensations in the body, I feel like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? And I have this feeling like, I don't know what's going to happen to me, and I freak out. And usually it's right before a new breakthrough, and I have to break through into something new that I do every day in these healing, self-healing meditations. And basically they're light activations, because I receive, you know, from light source that are, again, they're different octaves each time, because I'm anchoring different templates. So because this is what's being new, it's being anchored, usually that's not something you do within a week or even a month. Sometimes it's long lasting, you know. And sometimes it's also in parallel. Now they're telling me there's now an amplitude or affinity or an ability to anchor several at once. So this is what I felt. This next triad's like becoming fifth and sixth, already becoming the seventh. Like, it's faster. But because it's faster, there's also a great overwhelm of the body. It's like, ugh, because of the overwhelming nature, the body sometimes withdraws, and it's like it doesn't want to fully receive because it feels like it's too much. And that's why I'm telling you both principles need to be applied, the feminine and the masculine. And what this means is we're learning also how to hold the space for the body, not just informing it. Okay, go deeper, right? We're anchoring this, we're anchoring that. It can be instructional, like it can be instrumental in that way, because that in a way can hurt the body. What the body needs is, I'm gonna say like this, I'm gonna simplify. So the body is like your child, right? So you wouldn't be forcing a child onto this premature awakening of something like, come on, you're 6 years old now, so you're supposed to speak like and talk and perform like 6 years, like any normal functioning 6-year-old would, right? So it's like we have this idea of where we should be or where the child should be. What the body needs, especially when there's like letting down and this feeling like when I have my own self let down mode, right? It's basically the body saying, I feel that if I don't produce, if I don't perform in this way, if you feel the healing is not successful, because that's the way the mind makes the assumption, right? So you're going to leave me. The body feels like left out or feels abandoned. And this is where a new level of that increase of this, what I call the mother's love, the mother's presence, the womb needs to come in. Because basically holding space for that means holding that template. So when we're in the processing, usually what happens for me is when I'm anchoring a new template, a new aspect of density, is nothing I've learned before will work anymore. And this is where it gets frustrating. So when we're moving, we're really expanding within the spiral of organic ascension. For the time being, sometimes we're going to have to let a lot of the concepts go of what we already learned previously, which is only for the duration of learning that new aspect. It doesn't mean that what we learned before doesn't belong to that density and it's full and whole onto itself. And now just because you're in this new next octave, you're no longer in your wholeness, right? Why am I imbalanced again? Because before I've reached it, I was already there. This is why Ascension, that's organic and wants to open us to the full receptivity of spirit life force and total ingenious nature of our creatorship, right? It's a process. So that's why I'm sharing it with you, because I'm experiencing myself, and that's why I'm able to do this. If I would be just performing here in front of the camera, right, it wouldn't make any sense. It would just be like a bunch of words, you know, aimlessly shooting out arrows, right? So because this is such an interesting process, and as humans, it's new to us, right? It's new for the human counterpart. It's like we need to see the human body as our love child. So when the love child has a tantrum or creates a distortion or wants something else instead, we need to listen, because there's something there. And it's okay, because the body's literally signaling to us that maybe I need to receive something more before we go to the next step. So recently I was in my healing session recommended this product that revitalizes the cells. So I've talked to you about these experiments that were performed on my body and how they depleted myself, my body, the cells, right? It overburned the cells. They were exhausted. It's like what I've heard was almost like cellular collapse. It's specific parts of the body, and also the entrapments of these electrical dispensations that were, you know, like beamed through my body. And I still hold a lot of these in my body, and where they are at an overwhelming rate, I have issues and tremendous pains even. So there's like an idea, you know, okay, what if I take this product and it helps my cells to reopen? This was what I recently encountered. Then what will happen is I won't know what's then the effective part. Is it really my healing, the way I'm being taught by my light team now? Is that which really made me heal and made me surpass all these aspects and issues, or was it the product? And I was a little confused. I didn't know, because what I'm doing now is I'm attending to everything consciously, right? I don't want to just make impulsive decisions about what will take in my body, what's the healing methods or remedies that I'm supposed to engage in. That's the Christ consciousness. That's the sixth. That's what I keep telling you. Like, this is like the Christ sovereign is a new aspect, right? And it's beyond that which we've called the fifth density, like pure heart, like masculine, feminine in unity, the heart of unity, the heart of union. That's basically that divine union many talk about as in being the twin flame polarity. But it's basically that feminine and masculine aspect coming to full unity, and the next level is Christ. That's the sixth, speaking again in density terms. So the answer I received was that there's no more this or that, you know. It's still duality. That in this framework you have to see everything as a part of the Christ. So it's like, it's because it's layered and because it's a spiral, it's not linear. It's not like, yeah, only my healing and it has to be this way and and zap zap. Again, right? We're in that linear perspective and it's still rigid. So I was shown that it's all like this step and the next step and the next step, and it's kind of like all in concordance and this beautiful dance that they're creating. So it would mean if I'm inviting this remedy or product or something in my life, it's already my consciousness that's kind of bringing it in, which means it's going to help to open my cells or reopen my cells, that they would even become susceptible to the next level of an advancement of the new template I'm anchoring and the healing that is held in that template, which sometimes if the cells have been either burnt out after a previous cycle, and you know, those of us who are doing it really fast, then it's sort of like it needs to be seen through love. And I've channeled this very simple, pure guidance, which is it's all of love. And now at this level, everything is seen as not something goes against you or in opposition to you, but it's all because we've already anchored the fifth. It's all in unity. It's all in union. So whatever comes your way, it's working with you. It's working with your healing. It's, you know, it's the light body intelligence healing you're doing. It's the physical remedying you're doing. It's all aspects are one. This is like that the Christ, right? It's all. Like it's the wholeness and fullness of it all, and embracing all these things. Like it's holding the space. That's basically what holding the space means. So this is first this knowing that as the self, this is how we're going about this reality. So we're not supposed to get fixated on these ideas, yo, we manifest this way. No, we actually manifest this way. You know, people are at different levels, so that's where they're going to hold space for that level of manifestation. But there's people who are ascending really fast. That's what we need to keep open. That's why this principle of heart just open as a lotus, because it's receptive to fast changes now, because the spiral of this divine impulse of Mother's life force, right, is just coming through and streaming really strongly. But we here as humans, we need to open up layer after layer to be receptacles of it, right? So speaking in relation to others now, in relationships and holding space in that regard, because first it's about us, then it's the self. Just recently on my working page on Patreon, I made this video about how we're actually holding the space now for others and relationships in the groups, at the group level of the Christ group level, within this impeccable nature that the Christ brings. And when I'm looking back in my own experiences from the past, you know, sometimes they were so polarized, and a lot of times we as beings of light, we want to serve others, and you know, we want everyone to come in our circle of light, and we get very infatuated at times, and we're so polarized sometimes ourselves, and our own polarization will create polarizing experiences. So we've talked about this in my previous video, right, how these re-experiences need to come back full circle, and once they do, you know, we're going to be very changed. Like I'm seeing the way I am now as to where I was previously, or how I was previously, and what was anchored through me. It's like I used to be very infatuated. I would always give very fast replies and responsive to everyone, like, yeah, I'm here for everyone, just bring it in, which would sometimes at times leave me very depleted, even physically. So now what I've noticed as this major change is the way the Christ within me holds this presence is, it's like it just wants to hold space. I'm going to give you one example. You know, just recently I was by someone, right, that I had experience with. It was twice, like in a very cyclical, repetitive nature, similar, right? And I just had to withdraw because there was not an honoring of something that really took place by the other, right? And I just simply was guided to withdraw. And then I was contacted by the person again, and I was looking at the situation from a more conscious perspective, and I didn't want again to give a quick impulsive response. So I asked myself, well, what could be the possible responses? So, you know, the Christ is like, it's like it needs to see the full picture. And I didn't feel like my body was even telling me no. I just, you know, even I wanted to think about what to respond. It just, the body didn't even allow me, because the body's already holding this, you know, it's anchored this template of Christ principle. So it's like we're learning, right? And we're learning to hold a space for that. And I was witnessing myself and observing how different it is to in the past. Because let's say someone would return, it'd be like very nice, and it would be like, oh, all excited because, oh, they're back, or, you know, they love me, or this and that. But now it's different. Because what I'm noticing now is that the Christ is like that pure, impeccable nature of honoring the self and the other and others. And a lot of times as humans, we don't understand what true honoring is. We think, you know, someone shows up and obviously showing up with love and being excited for themselves and where they're now, or for you, or what's being showed out there, right? How you appeared to be. But there's still, you know, when you have those experiences, when there's still something lacking. And when I go within, I asked what that is. I'm usually shown that there's still, if there's still any percentage or an aspect that's not fully honoring, let's say the experience that was taking place. We've talked about it in the previous video, right? If there was any aspect of dishonoring of this mother's love and presence, like really through the heart, and I will see it quickly if someone approaches me, and even though their intention is purely loving and it's purely of the light, but that love is still seen as, you know, it doesn't matter what happened before, but, you know, it's all love anyway. That's still not fully honoring, right? The experience is what did take place, because that's sort of kind of like, it's not fully bringing things to illumined aspect. It's not bringing clarity about what it is. So when I ask myself, then what would be my response, right? One first question would be, well, responding automatically like we always do, blessing to all, you know, love, light, thank you. It's kind of generic, right? It didn't resonate with me. It was not authentic. So the second version was, what if I just went all out there and shared everything? What's still lacking? What's still missing? Something that I still don't feel to be complete. And then it also didn't feel right, because I would immediately go into the teaching narrative, right? Being the teacher and telling the other for not seeing an aspect that they didn't see themselves. It's not my job, right? Because again, you're playing the role of a teacher and healer to someone who didn't ask. You know, they're just coming, and they're just coming as a mirror. I said that doesn't come into, you know, consideration also. And then the third option was just silence, just holding space. And that felt right. Because, you know, the way we hold love and we hold presence through the Christ, we absolutely love. But that love doesn't need a specific way it speaks or narrates or tells others what you think you feel about this, or what they're, you know, doing, or what they're feeling or supposed to be acting like. It's like it just allows. It allows everyone to come into their space or their own conclusions, right? Their own fullness of their cycle. So it's like we're just holding that space of purity, what we talked about last time, as these concentric circles within us, spaces that we've already completed. And then when you're able to hold that space, even if another through your silence would, let's say, they would misunderstand and they would think, oh, they don't love me because they didn't respond like with words, or, but that's not true. You know, you love even more. I've realized that the way I love now, as a human, I've always had that love, like I knew it, but like bringing it and anchoring it into form, it's like it's deeper than anything before. So things will change, just know that. It's organic nature to grow. And the last message I want to share is, Spirit has been sharing with me that now it's more important to see when something isn't working. It's not necessarily that we're not doing enough or we're not successful in, you know, our pursuits, but it's usually something very simple. And again, we're not allowing more space. We're not allowing more space to be held. You know, it's even in this last example, right? We want to give the answer automatically because we get so excited. But sometimes more space is needed to be held. maybe before something comes into completion. And the inner Christ intelligence knows that. And when you anchor it into the body is that intelligence. So the body will signal to you. The body will tell you, I'm feeling this, or no. The body will tell you it wants to move towards the, let's say, the person or the other individual, or it wants to withdraw more for a while. The body is so intelligent once it holds this Christ template. It's really beautiful what I'm noticing. Although I still have a lot of challenges, you know, with this light body reshaping the physical form and allowing it to heal. It's a gradual process. But I'm being told how sometimes it's simply because we're not allowing the space to be held long enough. Because we as humans, we always want to get to the immediate. Oh, I want to show this person love, or I want to have this healing already be done in me. And that sometimes creates this push and pull. And in the push and pull, we're again retracing back to duality and always needing to come back to this benevolence of Christ, right? And how it truly serves and holds the space. So, you know, one example would be in meditation. When you're meditating, and sometimes I won't feel when I'm doing this technique now, in this process that my light team is teaching me, sometimes I won't feel anything. And sometimes it's because I'm not open enough that day, or I'm tired, or I didn't give myself enough rest, so I'm not able to receive, so I'm not feeling anything special. And what we do is often we're going to quit and we say, oh, it doesn't work, or I'm not receiving anything today. We're not patient enough for the body, so we don't hold the space. What we do in that moment, we need to retrace the steps, go back to the body, allow it through meditation to charge first, or whatever other way you use. Maybe it's like dancing, walking, singing, you know, whatever. But usually, like meditation does, it's like the fastest, right? It's like a shortcut to everything. Immediate source plug-in. And when there's like enough light quotient built again, and then there's love holding space, then you have that like a battery that's ready to be charged optimally, right? You can't put in a battery plus and minus not equalized. It has to be like locked in, right, perfectly with a minus and plus on both sides, like aligned, like column of the pillar of light. So then the horizontal needs to follow as well. And when you're in that way aligned, then you're able to be charged, right? So sometimes we're not, and then we lose the patience, or we think there's no results, or we're not seeing it. And this is usually it's not like something's wrong, or my guidance doesn't work, or I must be doing something wrong. But Spirit has been telling me lately, you're just not allowing yourself to hold the space long enough. Which again, it's not linear in terms of time, like you need to do it this many hours. But sometimes I'm shown just before a major breakthrough, we quit. And it's the same with our manifestations. So we say this doesn't work, but we actually we're just right there on the verge, but then we quit, and then we retrace and retract and go back. And it's a part of the human learning, I know. Sometimes I feel like a human idiot, not a divine intelligent one, but it's a part of the process, and we have to love those aspects too, because for me that's what organic ascension is. It's not all fancy talk like this. I'm hearing it nowadays everywhere, this Stargate Ascension and this. It sounds so fancy, but the true work is layered, you know, and you have to understand divine intelligence needing to penetrate every aspect of this realm and this form. It's intense, right? That's why it's quite a process. So it does require a lot of this patience and holding the space. So don't quit just before a miracle happens, you know. And sometimes if I'm not successful in my morning meditations, when I'm outside, then I'm going to be guided to do it again. And sometimes I'm successful, and then it happens, and I'm going to feel the energy moving through my body. So patience, patience, and knowing that we're each at different levels of what we're anchoring as that template, and we've chosen it like this way. Our souls have designed it this way, therefore we cannot compare at any level with anyone else. So who are we to think that someone else needs to be where we are, and now we need to be friends with everyone, like personally? We're already all connected. We already all love each other. And it's the beauty of the Christ, because it holds this connective space for all other aspects of consciousness, right? But it just doesn't have that need to always, you know, like either be there for everyone in a specific way, or receive from like someone specific in a certain way. It's just that divine intelligence. I don't have any other words but pure benevolence. And it takes a while for us to master this as humans, you know, because nowadays in the New Age, there's so much talk about Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness. But until you have a personal experience in it that's so direct, you don't even know what it is, right? You can read it in the book and say, that's nice. Move on, reading on, right? And we absorb a lot of information, but eventually on our path, we're going to come to this direct exposure to that, and it's going to be like, oh, you know, jaw-droppingly, amazingly saying, oh, but this is it, and I've read about this in this book, like, let's say years ago, and back in 2012 I had these memories and awakenings, and now it's like all coming. Now it's being anchored. This is what it is. This is how it's happening. So with all due diligence, that's the process, and I hope you have enjoyed some of the sharing today. So don't be too instrumental in the way you think how we're supposed to be truly manifesting as humans, you know, because there's still a lot of that, yeah, you need to be positive and this and this. It's like, it's just the first steps, you know, of opening up. But then there's more. And when you want to be human with full-blown capacity of understanding life, understanding creation, and knowing that's not just you and source, it's vertical, but it's a spiral. It's the beauty of life, and it's so many levels, and you want to explore them all, and you want to bring them to the human form, and the human needs to receive them, and it wants to receive them, but it also needs patience in the way that it's receiving it. So today when I was doing my meditation, I literally told my body, because when you're talking to the body, you're talking to every single cell in the body, right? And you're talking to it through the heart, right? That's the mother love. And you're saying to the body, it's okay. You know, I love you. Receive today just as much as you can. And that's okay. It's enough for today. You're doing good. You know, it's like being very encouraging of the body. So I'm still going through this anchoring process myself. I already thought that this month I'm going to start this training courses on Patreon at the advanced level of the Galactic Mastery level. So probably next month I'll see, but it's going to be, it's an intense, I think, process. So Spirit is showing me going at it through steps and layers. So this is what I'm going to do. First, we're probably going to do just an introductory course and just learning how it feels to be in the light body intelligence before we actually start applying it and using it, and, you know, gradually building up. So those of you who are ever guided to join, the content will be there. You know, it's going to start to bleed through the Spirit into me and through me, and being anchored into these teachings. So that's why we came here. And I know this path is sometimes so super challenging, you know, when I'm having all these pain in the body and I'm going like, what the heck? Why do I need this, you know? And then again, I know that I've chosen it because it serves as a trigger for me to expand into these next levels and help to anchor them and bring them to, through my own oath and the vow that I made in this life, to this planetary template, and to the human consciousness of those who are ready to expand and go to the next level and go take these steps and do the work that's organic. So as always, that's what it is for today. I do recommend this book. I mean, I love her work. Her work is truly Christ in nature. You can see that. It's beautiful. And I'll see you next time. As always, so much love, wisdom, and power. Take care.